All right, everyone. Good morning, and off we go. The first thing I wanted to do, as you're all settling in, and hopefully you've got your cups of tea and coffee at the ready for this. The first thing I'll do is I'll tell you a little bit about me and my background, because of course you'll want to know why you're listening to me today. So first of all, as principal of MPW Cambridge at the moment, my academic background is in theoretical physics. So I've done theoretical particle physics also as a PhD, and I did that in Germany and also here in Cambridge. So that is a good starting point. And for those across the world, I'm also an international student, which is important because it helps us and my team and me understand our international students. So I grew up in Germany and in the United States, which is possibly one of those things that makes my students feel that we really understand them. The involvement in academic research is something that I've done for numerous years, and I continue to network as well. So I still have a lot of colleagues here in Cambridge that are professors or admissions tutors, and we still play cricket together, for example, on the odd Sunday. So that networking continues. I'm always in touch with the university and the newest things that are going on here at Cambridge and elsewhere in the world. My route to my current post has taken me via head of department and director of studies role to a previous headmaster position where I was headmaster of a school for ages 2 to 18. And then I came back to MPW, where I had previously already been for 6 years of my time prior to taking my first headship. And this is now my 3rd year back at MPW Cambridge in the principal role. I've also continued to work and develop and network, and so I'm also a member of the Society for Research into Higher Education and the Association for Coaching, and that is my background, just as a little overview and why it is possibly sorry, I'm trying to move to the next slide. There we go. So before we go into the Oxbridge things, I'd like to talk a little bit about MPW. And we are obviously, as most of you will know, a 5th and 6th form college. The Cambridge location is one of the 3. The other locations are in London and in Birmingham. And the founding principles by Mander, Portman and Woodward were basically quite simple. They thought to themselves, if it works for Cambridge, then it should also work for 6th form. And what did they mean by that? What they mean by that is that the tuition and supervisions in very small groups, very intense, that Cambridge does, is something that they thought should be transferred over to A level and to allow students a similar intensity in their studies. And this has been a successful procedure now for quite some time across the 3 colleges, and it is what we base our success and our fantastic results on. The maximum class size at MPW is, along those principles, 9. So 9 students is the maximum in any given class, and the average currently is 5. The other things we do at MPW that make us special and possibly different from others is that we have weekly testing in most weeks in the autumn and spring term. We do not, we do not try to create fear or stress our students with the weekly testing. It is more something that we do to have continuity of progress monitoring. Students at this age group need to really learn to work with feedback and know their strengths and weaknesses and address those. And therefore, it's really important that through weekly testing, they get into a good rhythm by doing so. And this helps them then in subsequent lessons and homeworks to address those strengths and weaknesses. So the learning is very intense and throughout the academic year, not as very often clustered at the end of the academic year just before the exams. And then, of course, we have a personal tutoring system. Our personal tutors and DOSs are there for the students at MPW in Cambridge. This is my senior team and me. I still have 12 students of my own at the moment that I'm the personal tutor for. And when we say personal tutoring, we really, really mean personal tutoring, because our sessions are all one-to-one only. And in Cambridge, my team meets their students at least once a week, and that's one-to-one. So the personal touch is really important to guide a student, to discuss their strengths and weaknesses, and also, especially for the international cohort, to see that they're settling in well, to see that they haven't got any issues, to see that they're making friends, to see that they're finding hobbies and things to do in their spare time, and also to help them with the one or other challenge that they might come across. So this weekly meeting is a really important factor as well. And then MPW Cambridge is also very unique in the sense that we have a 50-50 international and UK mixture. So the international students really enjoy the large British cohort that they can mix with, and therefore they learn with and from one another. And that gives a really nice mixture to the college. Right now, also, for the second time now in 3 years, MPW Cambridge is in the top 1% in the UK for the government measure that looks at how students improve their results between the GCSE and A-level. So in those 2 years that students study after GCSEs, what A-level grades they then achieve on that government measure, we're in the top 1%. We're number 21 in the UK out of 2,654 colleges. So that is the academic success that we can celebrate, and that is not because we have magic abilities. That is because we have the small class sizes and the weekly testing and the personal tutoring that ensures that students progress and progress really well. Some facts about MPW as well. We've just had our Ofsted inspection in November last year, and you can see the report there on the right-hand side. And so we achieved outstanding in all areas again. And on the left-hand side, I've given you some comments that have made their way into the Ofsted report. So one of them is that students say that MPW is amazing and a great place to study. And I'm particularly proud also of the last sentence, which says they showed pride as they spoke about their experiences in school and when they told inspectors with a smile that they can't get away with anything here. So I think those are comments that show that the students feel looked after, that there is discipline and respect in the college, and that they're happy in their studies with us, which is of course really, really important, especially for those 50% that have joined us from overseas. Furthermore, the Ofsted report, which of course you can also download from our college website. These have to be available for all schools and colleges in the UK on the website. So any school that you might look up on their website will have that downloadable. They further commented on the international students and how they welcome the support we give them through the personal tutors. And of course, you know, it's not just all about academics. We also need them to feel happy and cope with the challenges that they're far away from home. The school council, which we recently introduced, is also inclusive and reflects our multicultural community, and that sort of brings us to the end of the section of the most recent report. So the Oxbridge Masterclass, of course, needs to focus on the route to the top universities. What are these top universities looking for, and how can one achieve to support and mentor students to get there successfully. So, of course, we will go through the basics right here, and I'm also going to have a little question for you all in a moment. First of all, of course, every top university will expect top grades and their IELTS requirement that tends to be 6.5 overall or a 7.0 overall for top universities. What is important here to state right from the start is that these grades and the requirements are not tick box exercises. So when a top university says that for a course that they want an A star and 2 A's and an IELTS from 7, then the student who is predicted an A star and 2 A's and has an IELTS of 7 just about makes it onto the table of the admissions tutor. If you imagine all the applications that the admissions team will receive across the months that the UCAS system is open, and if we take all of those that make it onto the table and we order them by strengths, especially academic and grades, then you will have quite a number of students on there who will have a second or a third even A star, and whose IELTS might be 8 or 8.5, especially at top universities. That is quite often the case with applicants, and therefore it is really, really important to know that a student, just because they have the minimum grade requirement and the minimum IELTS requirement, that this is not something that will secure them the place. Of course, admissions tutors will also look at the academic foundation. So they might look at GCSE results previously, and they will want to see that those are in line with expectations. And they are the grades in existence that further underline a student's academic credibility in the application process. Because, I mean, any college could in theory just predict any student a top set of grades. Of course that will damage credibility over time, but it is important that in addition to predictions, a good foundation is already visible, so that to an admissions tutor, sort of the whole CV, the whole application makes sense, and different aspects shake hands. Having the right subjects is of course also of importance. Certain courses will have certain subject requirements, and it is important that students start looking early, before choosing their A-level subjects, what these subject requirements are. And some of them are relatively straightforward. So you would expect that if you want to study maths, then you should be doing A-level maths. If you want to do medicine, then you should have biology and chemistry, or both. And with these right subjects, it is also important to know, and this is where good personal tutors and UCAS experts come in. It is also important to know what universities like and don't like. So what springs to mind immediately is, for example, that a top application, say a student wants to study economics at Cambridge, then it is absolutely fine for that students to have chosen economics as an A-level subject. However, we do know that admissions tutors in Oxford, for example, would prefer students not to have taken economics at A-level. And it is not said that a student who has economics is totally disadvantaged and will not gain a place, but Oxford make it quite clear that they would rather a student has a strong academic foundation, and they leave the teaching of the economics to Oxford. And the same goes, for example, for further maths at LSE. There are courses at LSE where further maths is required or desired, and there are courses where the further maths does not count as an additional A-level to maths. So the further maths combination will not then be respected in the admissions process as having two separate subjects. So it is important for students not just to have the right subjects. The statement as a bullet point on the slide might look a little bit too obvious, but it is important that students start looking early when it comes to these subjects and the type of top university that they would be looking to apply for, because it does make a difference. Another example might, for example, be law. Many of the universities state that they would rather that students who want to study law at university do not do law A-level as a subject. Again, this is just a preference, but something that one should be aware of. The next section, the next bullet point, highlights 3 and 4 grades that I've put up here. And I would like to use this as a little opportunity for you to engage with us in a little quiz. We will be using the chat box for this one, and you can type your answer into the chat box. However, I will ask you please to not hit the return button yet, so that we can all submit our answers at the same time, and we'll get a nice overview of the answers that we've gotten. So the question is, we've got a student who is taking 3 A-level subjects, and we've got a student who is taking 4 A-level subjects. And the question is quite simply, which of those two, the one with 3 subjects having achieved A star AA, and the one with 4 subjects having achieved A star AAB, which of those two would admissions tutors tend to say is the better and stronger candidate? So as an admissions tutor, do you prefer A star AA, or do you prefer A star AAB? If you could type your answer now into the chat box, that would be fantastic. And then if we could all at the same time now hit return, and we will see what the results are. So 4 subjects, 3 subjects. The first one, the one with the B, the first one, the 4 subjects. Interesting. Neither. Adib, very nice. Good. I can see we've got a large mixture there, and it is a bit of a trick question. I'll be honest. Of course, we're doing this on purpose. No, the answer is quite simple if we keep in mind that we're talking about the top universities, and with that, for example, let's reduce the set to Oxford and Cambridge. I can assure you that at Oxford and Cambridge, for example, the student with A star AA and having only done 3 subjects is considered the stronger applicant. Quite simply, the second student has shown a weakness by achieving only a B in one of their subjects. And that weakness stands out more than the fact that someone has done 4 A-level subjects stands out. Now, of course, some of you are also right who say the second set is stronger. If you're applying for not a top tier university, then having 4 A-level subjects might prove also a benefit when it comes to UCAS point counting, etc. But of course, then one wouldn't expect A star AA and A star AAB. Then you might look at a student achieving BBCC and having done 4 subjects. But in general, this is why we say a student should be studying 3 subjects, because we want them to focus fully on the 3 subjects and get the 3 best grades that they can, and spreading themselves across a 4th subject can then ultimately be detrimental. And this brings us to the extended project qualification, or EPQ. It is an qualification that AQA have produced a number of years ago now, and which has kind of overtaken the 4th A-level subject, or what used to be maybe that 4th AS subject in the olden days. The extended project qualification is an essay, and a student has to do their own research and write this essay, and they can choose any topic they would like. So I have had students choose a certain type of cancer. I have had students choose a topic in psychology, and I have had students write a vegan cookbook. The topic itself is not what makes the extended project qualification. What makes the EPQ is that a student has done research, that they have gone through a number of sources, and that they have brought these sources together in their essay, in their EPQ, and through bringing them together have added value. And that is seen as an academic piece of writing. Of course, they need to reference their sources, and of course they need to quote, they need to watch out for how plagiarism works. So of course you can bring other sources together, but you have to label them correctly, and you have to put exactly and make it clear which parts are your own work and which parts are things that you've gathered together. But universities really like the extended project qualification because it allows students to prove themselves in a fashion that they can't when they're just sitting exams. So if a student sits an exam at the end of the academic year, that will usually be 90 minutes to 2 hours, and they are limited in how much they can write or do in those 90 minutes or 2 hours. The extended project qualification allows them to do and prove themselves over a longer period of time with a real essay subject, and learn these skills of bringing together other sources and identifying them correctly. So that is considered a real academic piece of work. I'm noticing that one of you might have their microphones on. If you could please double check. We're getting a bit of noise in the background. Thank you. So that said, the EPQ is graded also in the same way that A levels are graded, and it's worth half an A level. So that is why often it has now, or in the beginning has replaced that fourth A as subject. But we have also seen that when students at MPW complete the EPQ in the first year of sixth form, it is meant to be done over 2 years, but if they complete it in the first year of their sixth form, then they have an existing grade on their UCAS application. And that is an added edge to their application, because students who do it at institutions over 2 years, they will again only have that as a prediction. And we have seen at top universities, not at Oxford and Cambridge, but at other Russell Group universities, we have seen that offers may have dropped by a grade or sometimes 2 from the standard offer of the university. So Russell Group universities who might ask for AAB as a standard offer would then have possibly got back to a student and offered them an A and 2 Bs, or even 3 Bs, and we can see that is as a result of a fantastic result in the EPQ. So as a quick summary, we've done grades and IELTS requirements, and we've gone through why that box ticking exercise is not enough. There are still too many students out there who think that if they hit the minimum requirement, then that makes them a candidate who is almost secured to gain their place. We've talked about the academic foundation, which is really important. We've talked about having the right subjects and how this has to be looked at often before they even start their sixth form, when they choose their subjects. And I think this is where, of course, our international team comes in and supports you as agents, as families, as students with these choices, and they can refer back to us in the colleges as well when they have questions. And my team is always on hand to help answer any questions that might arise from these things. But of course, you'll be aware of that through Betty already. Then we played a little quiz, and I talked a little bit about the EPQ, and that brings us to the second page, which talks about the preparation for an application. In the preparation for an application to a top university, universities always say that they want to see that a student goes over and above what is normally required, and admissions tutors want to see passion beyond the classroom. Now, what what do they mean by that? Because achieving a top set of grades, of course, is proving the academic potential and should be enough to secure a place. However, what universities would like to see is that a student engages with the subject far beyond the limits of the school or college that they're at. And especially Oxford and Cambridge want to see that a student has gone out into the world and done things. And these things can be that a student goes and attends a summer camp, a summer school. There are summer schools now all across the world, even offering subject specific and course specific summer schools. Cambridge itself is doing the master classes every spring for the lower 6 students, where students can go and do the Cambridge Masterclass for example, engineering or medicine. Those are things where students can go and join together with others, so with their peers, and experience what universities are putting on, what summer schools are putting on, in order to grow their fascination, grow their interest in a certain subject and course. And that would be one of those examples. Another example would be, and this is something that we're pushing a lot at MPW as well with our personal tutor system, is that we get students out there and go and listen to talks. It is a bit of a surprise always how many students do not know just how much is available at universities, just how much is on offer. And anyone who goes and Googles, even now, while you're listening to me, Google's open lectures, Imperial, open lectures, Cambridge, open lectures, Oxford, we'll see that these universities even have dedicated websites where these open talks and lectures are listed, and they are really open to the public. So some of them might require registration. This is often what then holds students back, because they think, oh, well, I can't register. I don't have anything to register with. Well, what they're doing is they would like to get someone's email address through the registration and then confirm their place and give them a number. And that only has the sole purpose of keeping the lecture hall to its capacity. So the registration process requires no money, requires no credit card, has no hidden features in it. And so these talks and lectures that are open at universities on a weekly basis, of course not so much right now because we're in special circumstances, but you will see on those websites often you can scroll back what happened last term and even the term before, and they can be absolutely fantastic. And it isn't so much about what a student learns from these lectures. It isn't so much that the student that can then come out and in an interview answer 5 extra questions that otherwise they wouldn't have answered. No, it is the fact that a student who goes there and who experiences such a talk is clearly showing that they are interested. And on the other hand, a student who goes out and listens to such a talk, they will also learn a bit, and it will also pose further questions that arise by listening to such a talk. It's the same as with reading a book. Students often go and see what universities have as reading lists that are suggested, and this is something that particularly now will be important under the COVID situation. Students can go on university college websites and see what reading lists are given. So if a student, for example, wants to study engineering, go to any Cambridge or Oxford college and look at their website and Google reading list engineering, and there'll be a number of books that a student might be interested in reading. Again, it's not about having read those books and having learned them off by heart. It is really gaining experience, gaining fascination, and having something to talk about, especially in an interview, that is not part of the normal A-level syllabus, but of course, without having already tried to prepare and learn the first 2 years of the university course content. So this is where it is often misunderstood what the actual goal is. The goal is not to go to further classrooms to just learn more. we could then just make PDFs with the content, and everyone could stay at home and learn at home. It is important that students venture out and that they do things, and that by attending talks and maybe even being able to ask a question, or with snacks and tea afterwards, be able to mingle with the crowd and to maybe even ask the speaker a question. I've even had students in the past in Cambridge who've been regulars at the engineering department weekly talks, and they got to know one of the turned out professors who does the year 1 lectures. And after bumping into him several times, the student just asked a few questions, and the professor suggested afterwards why the student doesn't come and join in the year 1 lectures. And what started as a one-off, then in the end saw the students for several weeks go to year 1 lectures at Cambridge Engineering. Not that the student came out and said they understood everything, of course, that was said in those lectures, but the fact that the student could join in, could feel the vibe, could feel the university atmosphere and sat in that lecture was just such a motivating factor. And again, that would have been something that the student could have talked about in their interview as something that fascinated them. And therefore, that is what makes the difference between the one student with good grades and the other student with good grades. And I've put here, some students think I'm already a top applicant, and that's often because they have the tick box approach, and they look at university entry requirements and they think, well, look, I'm satisfying all of those, I'm absolutely fantastic already. And then on the other hand, we have students who say, well, you know, I might have good grades, but I'm not really, I don't think I'm that special. I don't think I should be going for such a place. And it's important as a college and as a personal tutor that we can take students and we can advise and mentor them through the process. And of course, both students with their respective comments are only showing where they are currently in their lives and how they're feeling about their academics and what their confidence levels are. But it is our goal and our purpose that we can help both students see what the next steps would be in order to further grow their confidence, and also show them that maybe even if a student already is achieving top grades on a regular basis, there is still more to be done to be a top applicant. And both types of students really benefit from going to open university talks and lectures. And I mean, for example, here at MPW Cambridge, we've got the engineering department 250 yards down the road. We've got the chemistry department 300 yards down the road. We've got the Judge Business School about 500 yards down the road. And those agents that have come on a fam trip to Cambridge in the past, they would have stayed in a hotel right next to the Judge Business School, so you might even know that one. But yes, this is really important that we get students to have further exposure outside of the classroom, and that will then create an interest and a passion, and that will allow them in an interview to come across as a young, very inspired, very fascinated by the subject and the course content person, and not so much being able just to answer all the questions, because that's what an interview is not about. Of course, an interview works on the basis of some questions that need to be asked, but it is about being able to convince the admissions team that the passion for the subject is there. So talks, lectures, work experience, anything a student can get their hands on that doesn't distract them from their A-levels, because of course the grades are still the most important factor, but all those exposures need to be sought out, and that's where it's unbelievably important to support a sixth form student. Anecdotes from the admissions offices, there are aplenty. One of my favorite ones is always the geography student who applied to Oxford, and in the interview the professor simply said, look, I'm a geography professor and you come from that region in the country, and if I visited you next weekend, then around your hometown, where would you take me and what would you show me, and why, as a geography teacher, as a geography professor, would I find that interesting? And you wouldn't guess, but the answer of the student, top grades, top predictions, absolutely fantastic looking application, said, well, I don't really think there's anything interesting around where I live. And that, of course, was more or less the end of the interview. We're told that the interview, of course, commenced for the normal duration, but the admissions tutor would have told anyone amongst their friends, especially over a beer in the evening, that was the moment the interview was almost over. Because a student who's interested in geography, a student who has a passion for it, there is no region in any country that doesn't have anything interesting to show. And so this is how in an interview the top universities will test whether someone's interest and passion is real. These are questions that one cannot prepare for. There would just be far too many. And yes, this goes for many other subjects as well. University students who, sorry, not university students, college students who look to study medicine, for example, need a really good medicine program. They can, of course, have their own exposure. They can go to talks and lectures at medical departments, whether it's here in Cambridge or whether it's in London, at Imperial, at UCL. And in addition to the work experience and the lectures, it is also vital that they can just engage with the subject as much as possible and ask questions when they go to lectures and talks, ask questions when they do their work experience. Again, it's not something that you just want to put on a piece of paper that you've done it and then you've ticked the box. In an interview, you'll be found out very quickly that your fascination and the questions you asked and the answers you got are very different, possibly to that of another student who will beat that student in the interview. With regard to medicine, for example, what we do in Cambridge is we have an ex-student who did, after attending MPW, did medicine at Cambridge and is now a doctor at the Cambridge University Hospital. And she still comes back to the college and she supports our medics and she gives them one-to-one support for their personal statement. She does a mock interview with them if necessary. They do a second one, and she will also ensure that they're fully prepared for an interview or for a medical stations interview. So yes, that is really the second key, and this is why this is the second slide. That part of going over and above, it can't be stressed enough, how much a student can and should be doing, and will then find it very easy in an interview to engage with the interviewer and to show that they're passionate, to show that they have favorite topics, to show that they watched a documentary or went to a talk or during a work experience saw something happen. And also, the exposure can be quite crucial, not only directly for the application, but also helping a student choose the right course. So I have a student who's one of my PTs at the moment. Her name is Letitia, and Letitia wasn't quite sure what she wanted to do. She was kind of between business and law, so two subjects she really liked, and she just couldn't decide. So with all the exposure she'd had, she was just still unsure as to which route to go down, and she didn't want to do a combined course. And therefore we sat together and we Googled a few talks, and we found a couple of business talks, one of them at the Judge Business School in Cambridge and one of them in London. And we also found two interesting law talks. One of them was at LSE, and the other one I can't remember right now, but it was also in London. I think it was UCL. And we sent Letitia to these talks, and she came back and she said, absolutely fantastic. I really enjoyed all four talks, but I've now decided business is not for me. It just I enjoyed the talk and I enjoyed the content, but I could just see that everything in the law talks was just so much more fascinating. And there she was from being 50-50 about her choice, going and seeing 4 talks. 3-4 weeks later, she'd made her mind up, and she's now very confident and has got her offers for law. So when she gets her results this summer, she'll become a lawyer. Of course, ensuring the grades has to be the last step, because the interview process and the application are all only there to gain the student the offer, which is the ticket, but we still have to pay the entrance, and usually the ticket is not an unconditional one at a top university, and so we do need to ensure that the grades follow suit. And that's where in normal years we also say, can be very useful and also confidence boosting for students. It isn't that a top student needs additional, for example, Easter revision courses to ensure their grade. A top student is already a top student, but it can make a big difference also in terms of confidence, and that's where I want to finish on this slide. Further preparation and reading. I've put up here the picture that many of you will know in this form or another. So we have our own MPW internal books. They are written by MPW personal tutors over the years and updated on a yearly basis. You can see on these books our logo. Our logo is on there, but relatively small. These books are used across the UK in most sixth forms. You'll find them in the library, and most people don't even realize that there's a little MPW stamp on it. So these books are a fantastic way for any student to get a good idea. They're available on Amazon. We have them at the colleges, and we give them to interested students, and they cover a range of courses. And so do keep an eye out for those. If a student has a certain direction in mind, and one of our getting into guides could be useful, then that's something they can definitely read. And again, as I've said, before starting A-levels, the earlier a student starts, the better. And it's also, for me, it's important as an educator and as a principal that I understand that my students don't just work on discipline, don't just work on achieving good grades. Those are good things to have in mind when wanting to attend a top university. But what we really need to make it successful is that we need a student to be fascinated by something, to have a real goal. Just good grades are not a good goal. Just a top university is not a good goal. A student who has set their eyes on a specific college at Oxford, wanting to do classics at that college and no other college, that's a student who is in a completely different fashion attending talks and lectures, reading books, looking at reading lists, and doing everything they can to achieve the top grades. And that is really what makes the difference for a student. And the earlier they start looking at these things, the better for them. So there's nothing wrong with a student rocking up at the college and saying to me, look, I want to go to Balliol College in Oxford and study classics. I mean, that's the kind of student who would get any personal tutor excited. Of course, we are currently in a different situation than we would be normally. We're all aware that the colleges are currently not running face-to-face tuition and the schools, and so just over a week ago we started, well, no, just over 2 weeks ago now, we started the virtual teaching, and this has been a really good success at MPW in Cambridge. And you can see here I've posted a personal message about our virtual teaching, and you can see also a photo there of some of our team, including one of the students, who are all working from home. You can even see our mindfulness coach on there in the virtual environment, as well as teaching team, student and international team. And so for us, it's been really important that the virtual teaching has been extremely successful. And I guess one of the keys there is that we have the small class sizes to be able to do this. Once a class size goes above 10, if a teacher is sitting at home when they've just got a few faces on their screen and they're trying to help 15 or 20 students, then we can all understand that can be really difficult. But here, the MPW class size has really turned out to be a key feature in the continued success that we're having with these lessons, and the feedback that we're getting from staff and students is absolutely fantastic. And I've put on here a thank you note that I received from one of the parents who I can't name and shame, but he's a pro vice chancellor of a top university in the UK as well, and the son attends MPW Cambridge, and this is what he'd written to me. And also a little quiz in the bottom right hand corner for you. What have a hospital, a taxi, and a 2-star hotel have in common? These were the highlights just before the Easter break for us in the virtual teaching world. We had students attend lessons from those places. So we had a student who was isolated after traveling in a hospital back in their home country. That was just where everyone was isolated who flew that day, and they were put into a 14-week isolation before the borders closed. And in the hospital room, the student joined the lesson. We had a student who was flying back to South America, and on the way to Heathrow in the taxi, she was attending one of her MPW lessons via the iPad and the mobile phone internet. And then we also had a student who wasn't given a hospital bed, but was given a 2-star hotel bed back in her home country for self-isolation after landing for 2 weeks, and she joined us from there. So we've had some really good successes with the students, and like I said, the small MPW classroom environment just lends itself at this difficult time to still be able to provide a 5-star service for our students, even if they're only in a 2-star hotel, or albeit in a taxi. And that brings me to the end of my part of the session, and I would like to thank you for your attendance today. And of course, there will be questions and answers now, and I'd also like to now pass you back on to Betty.
Thank you very much, Marcus. I'm just looking at the questions we have now, and they are questions for you. So are you able to just go back onto the chat screen, Marcus, and then you can see the questions that are coming in? I've asked a question, so I will start. So it's a question that I get asked quite often, and it's, do you think a student would have a higher chance of getting into Oxbridge if they choose a less popular degree, or is that a myth?
That is in my view a myth, simply because while we can play the numbers game and say that a less popular degree will have fewer applicants, that less popular degree, those fewer applicants will be absolutely fascinated by the topic, have done their work for years, and in the interview will be able to shine. The student who is a little bit interested in that subject and has chosen it over their real subject because they thought it would give them an edge will be found out in the interview as simply not having that background. So all those trick questions, like the one I explained with the geography tutor, where universities just are very clever in finding out how fascinated and what background a student has for a certain course or subject. Therefore, I think it's a really silly idea to go for a different course to think that the numbers are better there, when in reality, the density of fantastic applicants will still be very high at the top, and someone trying to sneak into there without the proper background and without the 100% fascination can't be deemed a good idea.
Okay, good. Thank you. So then just going back to that, Beatrice has asked a question. So Beatrice is based in Italy at the moment.
Yes,
and going
hello,
back
Beatrice.
to your geography question, is any other bizarre questions for other subjects? Leaving the college choice open decreases the chances.
Sorry,
Question.
I did. You cut out a little bit there. I apologize.
So if you look on the chat, you'll see. So Beatrice says, any bizarre questions for other subjects? Leaving the college choices open decreases the chances. Is that correct?
I can't.
Beatrice, do you want to jump on and ask your question?
Well, hello. Thank you.
Hello, Beatrice.
So, to both of you, hello. The question was, leaving the college choice open, which is an option.
Yes.
Is it negative? I mean, does it decrease the chances of being accepted?
No, not at all. Not at all. And both Oxford and Cambridge state that themselves. If a student wants to attend a specific college and they have good reasons for wanting to attend that college, then that's absolutely fantastic. And the college will be happy, of course, to have their application. If a student does not prefer a specific college and just wants to study at the institution themselves, then the universities don't see a reason why they should now trawl through the colleges to try and find a favorite college. And then to, without real reason, rock up in an interview and try to explain why they chose that college. That would be really silly. And therefore, the open application does completely make sense. And the open application is also one that in the pool, all the colleges will have a look at. So I think it's just as good to apply directly to a college if one's reasoning is good, as it is to go for an open application and to be picked out from the open applications. Because at the end of the day, going for the top applicants will mean that a really good applicant will be chosen from an open application just as much as from the subset in one college. And then the other thing is that, of course, the colleges, when they come across someone who's fantastic but who no longer fits in, so if a college has 12 places for a certain course and the 13th they think is also a superstar and should have got a place, but they've run out of space, then they drop them in what is called the pool. And in the pool, the other colleges can look for applicants if they haven't quite found what they were looking for, and so this is common practice that colleges look in the pool and in the wider application world rather than just who applied for purely their college. So chances exactly the same, and even University and Oxford state that. And of course, it is in their best interest that they get the best applicants. And colleges fight one another over the best applicants to some degree even. So for them to put something out that is not true would be counterproductive for their intent to get the best students.
So thank you, Marcus. I know their website states there's no difference. I just wanted to ask you on the basis of your experiences, because from what you said, it would actually make sense if the objective is getting into the institution rather than a specific college. From what you said, you might even stand perhaps more chances.
Again, I would say that the chances are the same because the applicants who stand out and who are really good will be found. The system finds them. There are far more applicants than places in the top universities, and the system is very good at picking them out, regardless of which route they originally went through. But then, of course, they have to respect that someone says, "Look, I want to go to Peterhouse College in Cambridge because two of the fellows there do research projects that go exactly in the direction that I'm super interested in. And that's why I want to join that college." Or someone says, you know, this college has the best swimming team in the university. And in addition to wanting to do engineering, I've been a swimmer all my life. I've competed maybe in the junior world championships. So when I go to a college, I need that college to be good at swimming. Those are reasons why to join a college. And of course, the top universities in the collegiate system are very keen that the students that join them don't just do academics. The whole idea of the college system is to participate in the wider life, is to come across students studying other subjects and spending time with them and learning from them, debating with them, discussing with them. And also, the top universities, Cambridge and Oxford, close down for half a day a week to allow clubs and sports to happen. And I think the only department in Cambridge that still has the one or other thing happening on a Wednesday afternoon is medicine, but all others stick to that because they want their students to engage in the wider life, and that's where the colleges come in.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Marcus. We've got a couple of questions from Dewey. So I don't know if Dewey wants to ask the questions by voice, or I can read the questions out. Okay, so the question was, would you please explain about UCAT and BMAT for medicine students, and how does MPW assist the A-level students to pass the test?
All right, so UCAT and BMAT are two medical admissions tests. There are universities that accept only BMAT, and there are universities that only accept UCAT. There's fantastic literature out there that helps students prepare for the test. There is a website that allows them to take a mock exam and to experience exactly what the online world in the test will be like, how the countdown timer looks and works, what sort of questions they'll be asked. So the material out there is already very good. And what we do as a college as well is, for the students wanting to take the test, we also prepare them for the test. But it has to be said that the preparation for the test is more getting used to the test and the kind of questions that take place, because of course, as these tests are designed, they ask such clever logic questions, etc., that preparation for the questions is nearly impossible. So there is no syllabus one could study to be good in this test. What we do with students, therefore, is we go through lots of past questions, and we let them do the mock, and we guide and help them in their approach to the questions. And that is as far as the preparation goes. So we do all that one-to-one. We appreciate that we do need to prepare students for those tests and give them as much as exposure as possible to the questions and what the environment will look like when they sit the test, to make them comfortable and confident. But it also has to be said honestly that those that say they do very specific, very specialized preparation for these tests are often selling a product that in that shape or form shouldn't really exist in the market, because these tests are designed so that one isn't able to prepare or cheat.
Okay, thank you. Susan Fang, we've had Susan on our webinar last week. I wonder if Susan wants to, she's got quite a few questions. So I wonder if, Susan, you want to come on?
Sure, no problem.
Great, thank you.
Good afternoon, Marcus.
Good
Thank
afternoon.
You so much for your very comprehensive presentation. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you very much.
I've actually got quite a few questions, but I'll try to not elaborate. So first of all, is truth or myth? So is it true that you can apply to a less popular college at Oxbridge to increase your chance of getting in? For example, I'm female, so perhaps I could apply to a female college like Newhall, or Lucy Cavendish, whatever. So that's my first question. Second question is,
Newhall is accepting males going forward.
Newnan. I don't mean, in my days, Newhall, Newnan were the two females. I was at King's. Okay, so second question was for international Oxbridge applicants residing overseas at the time of application. Is it better for them to actually make themselves totally available for the whole of December and January just in case, you know, they are stuck in Oxford for a whole week or two for, you know, several interviews, or if they apply to Cambridge, they might not have gotten the first time round, but have been put in a pool, so they need to return in Jan. Yeah, so second question. And the third question is really, I'm just curious, you know, when you applied to Cambridge, did you specifically select a college and why? Thank you.
All right. No, excellent. Very good questions. The first one was about choosing strategically the college for statistical getting into purposes and maximizing chances. For me, that's a myth. And for me, the danger therein lies that every year you can see the stats of who applied last year. And what you often see is that over the year after year, they swing backwards and forwards, because they do get the effect that a college that has had very few law students apply, suddenly the year after has far more law students apply, because they went with that strategy. So I would say that is not a strategy, that is pure luck, whether that way of choosing a college works out as being beneficial or not. And again, for going for all female colleges, for example, there is still the pool. And like I said, Cambridge and Oxford have their own way of finding the best applicants. It's not that they overlook fantastic applicants because they happen to be hidden somewhere in the pool, or because a college kept them a secret, although it didn't take them. So I would say trying to play the numbers is a silly game, because there are many who do it, and therefore those that had fewer applicants last year will be swamped with applicants this year that went down that route. And again, at the end of the day, I think Cambridge has a set number of places, and those places will be filled with the best applicants, and they'll find them. So trying to sneak through a side door. If a college doesn't have good enough applicants, they just go to the pool. And if they have good enough applicants, then they still go to the pool to compare. So I would say that's definitely a myth, and I would advise against it. I see no reason to do that. Then your second question, I remember your third question, but I've kind of, sorry, what was your second question again?
You have to stay in the UK for December, January, just in case you have to interview with so many colleges, or you go back for the pool. I would say
that is something where I wouldn't give general advice. I would say that depends on the student and the student's situation. And the student should get in touch with the university when they are in a situation that requires them to be overseas, and ask that question in that year to the admissions department and ask for an answer. They'll be very happy to supply an answer, but that way one doesn't get wrong advice that may have changed from last year, or where Oxford do it different to Cambridge, or where the virtual world is becoming more important and suddenly they've changed what their advice was, and suddenly they're doing more virtual. So this is something where I wouldn't trust anyone who hasn't researched the matter in the last 2 weeks with their advice, and therefore I'm not gonna give a straightforward answer to that one. I would say the advice has to be, if you're a credible applicant to Oxford or Cambridge, then you can contact the admissions department and they'll be absolutely happy to help and give advice. And then often students have different reasons. Some might not be able to fly. Some might be able to fly. Some might say, look, the flight costs, if I book it last minute, are really expensive. Those are all things that Oxford and Cambridge get every year, and they find these questions really normal, and they've got their answers ready.
Okay, fabulous.
And about myself, I never had to apply. So my situation was that I did my master's thesis in Germany on Higgs particle physics, and I was invited for the particle physics seminar here in Cambridge on a Friday afternoon to hold the seminar with the results I had, and I gave that, and then out of that developed a relationship with one of the professors here, who was then my second PhD supervisor. and which is why I spent half of my time during my PhD working with Cambridge, and the other half still working with my university in Bonn.
Oh wow!
So
amazing. Reputation precedes you.
so I never had to go through the UCAS process, I'm afraid to say.
Well, thank you very much. May I just have one follow-up, just further to what you answered in the first question? Because you'd mentioned colleges might even look at the pool, even when they're not completely full, when they have vacancies. They will have the applicants who have applied to them directly, but they will compare those in the pool.
Absolutely.
So, oh wow!
Absolutely.
Okay.
If you want the best students, and there is no Cambridge or Oxford college that wouldn't sign that sentence, then you look at all applicants that are at your disposal and you decide which ones are the best, and you try to get the best ones. And of course, you look in the pool.
So really, you just might as well apply to your most favorite college, or the one that you think is the most grandeur, Trinity, St. John's, and King's.
And that's why I'm saying, well, the one word of advice: going for your favorite can be difficult. So going for Trinity Maths, for example, I wouldn't recommend unless one is an absolutely utterly outstanding mathematician, because, for example, Trinity will accept their applicants and then pool a certain amount, but they're not supposed to swamp the pool with applicants that they pool if they didn't accept them. So to go to the most competitive places, just because that could be a strategy, is ill-advised. I wouldn't apply to Trinity if I wasn't absolutely certain that I can compete with other Trinity applicants. And again, the general advice I'll go back to is, if you have no specific reason to apply to a certain college, don't. But if you do have a specific reason, then absolutely go with that, because that will be a reason that will come up in your interview.
Okay. Wow. Thank you so much. It's very insightful.
Okay, thank you. And then we have a question from Artus, who says, what kind of work experience should an engineer student do?
An engineer student. Oh, before I answer that, let me give you another anecdote. One of my favorites is that a medicine applicant for Cambridge this time had done as their work experience one or two of the usual things. You shadow a hospital doctor or a surgeon, and you go to a GP practice, and maybe you've worked in a hospice for a week or two, on a charity basis or whatever. But this student was had a really interesting bit on their CV. They had shadowed for a week the site manager of a large hospital, and the admissions team found that absolutely fascinating and really wanted to meet the student and really wanted to hear what view of a hospital and the site team and the porters and the nurses and the doctors and everything that goes on in a hospital, what understanding they developed and from shadowing the site manager, who of course has no medical jobs whatsoever. So that, as an anecdote, leads me into my answer, which is anything relevant is good, and anything that's a little bit creative, hidden within a few of the standard things one should be doing, is never a bad thing to differentiate oneself and to give the application a little bit of color. So of course they wouldn't have interviewed someone who had only shadowed a site manager of a hospital, but someone who'd done some proper work placement and shadowing, and then also had something really interesting that was slightly different to what others had. That stands out. I mean, that's I guess how we all work in our decisions as humans, regardless of where in life we make decisions. When something slightly stands out, it draws our attention, and we consider it as an option, although we normally wouldn't have. You know, if you go to the ice cream parlor and you know what you normally have, and suddenly there's this big sign that says, today we've got a completely different flavor, which is new, which you may want to have a go at, then suddenly you might not go for your standard choices. So for engineering, I would say, you know, go wherever people work with engineers. That can be in an office, that can be in a manufacturing hall, that can be at a university in the engineering department. There are endless options where one can gain valuable work experience. And please remember my statement earlier. It's not so much about what you learn there. It's not that two weeks later, the two students who went for engineering work placements compare notes of who now knows more about engineering. It's about getting to know work life. It's about getting a bit of life experience. It's about being able to see things in action and not purely in the textbook and in an exam. And therefore, the creativity should have no limits. And I would say all of those are viable options for someone who wants to go into engineering.
Great, thank you very much. We've got very limited time left, so I will just run through these questions. So we've got a really good question from M, who says, I missed what you've said about students who completed EPQ in 1 year and 2 years. Who is more attractive for the admissions team?
Well, the student who had completed it in the first year, I think they don't care about whether it took you 2 years or whether it took you 1 year. It's whether you've completed it, and you have to do a 1 year course to do that, whether you've completed it and have a grade by the time you do your UCAS application. Because the difference is it's either a grade on the UCAS application and it's already a certificate, or it's a prediction. And the student who has a grade rather than a prediction, of course, has an edge, because a prediction is not what a student automatically ends up with, whereas a certificate is guaranteed.
Fab, thank you. And another great question from Alabastro, who says, would you recommend a 1 year A-level student planning to apply to top universities to take up EPQ in addition to 3 A-level subjects?
That's interesting question, really good question. That depends on the student, that depends on their academic ability, that depends on what they've already done and why they've chosen a 1 year course, which is really demanding. If they come from a system where the grades are just not as accepted by UK universities, and therefore they're redoing a lot in their 1 year course, then the EPQ would be a fantastic thing to add and to do in that year, even if it's just a prediction. Plus, the EPQ will give them extra exposure. If they're researching a topic that has to do with the course they're applying for, then they're really getting stuck into that course, and it will indirectly give them a really good preparation for their interview, and they'll be able to mention that as well in their personal statement. So therefore, the EPQ would be an absolute edge, would prepare them for the interview, would give them extra exposure, and would do all the above. And therefore, it would be absolutely fantastic. But the 1 year A-level course is a really tough gig, and therefore a student needs to really decide whether they can take on that burden, and a student needs to be really well advised. So again, there can be no standard answer. That depends totally on the student. And we all know that a student who spreads their efforts over too many things will start to fall down in the one or other and not produce their highest standard. And that is always more detrimental than what they might benefit from doing more. So if a student can say, I'm definitely getting my 2 A stars and my A on this 1 year course, and I've done a lot of it before, do the EPQ. But if the 1 year course is going to be a tough gig, then maybe the extra burden of the EPQ also in that year is not quite justified.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to quickly just turn around and say, so we're getting quite a few questions about the EPQ, and on Wednesday the 8th of April we do have a webinar that's just dedicated to the EPQ, and that's at 10 a.m. So whoever's still on here, please do register for that session, who will be hosted by Martin Blythe, who is the head of the EPQ at MPW Birmingham. So any other questions you have about EPQ, please do join in that webinar on Wednesday at 10 a.m. Going back to the questions here. So Juno says, thank you, Marcus, for your presentation. In case of applying for history, is there any advantage for the applicants if they have a good AP calculus score?
If they have a good what, sorry?
AP calculus score. So I'm assuming AP calculus is the AP system calculus score.
Yeah. Any credential that shows that a student has a solid academic foundation and a broad one as well is going to be a good thing. It doesn't matter which subject one is applying for. So any certificate, any form that backs up a student's high aspirations, whether it's directly relevant or not, will still make an application a strong one.
Okay, great, thank you. And we do have the last kind of question is what kind, from Katerina, who says, what kind of work experience should a doctor student do during A-level? And is it better to take EPQ or fourth A-level subject?
Yeah, Katerina, the work experience a student should do is they should spread themselves widely. A standard package would consist of 3 elements, and those 3 elements can be picked from shadowing a GP, shadowing a university, a hospital doctor or nurse, shadowing a physio, working in a retirement or elderly people's home, palliative care. So there's a wide range there, and normally students would be expected to have done 3 things from that list. So most have definitely gone to a GP for a week and shadowed them, and most will have shadowed some form of hospital doctor as well, because it's good to have experienced both environments. And then the third, some even have a fourth, is then the moment where they can give their application a little bit of a spin, or where they can go down a route of what they found particularly interesting themselves, that they wanted to see. And I think the EPQ is the better way forward rather than the fourth A-level subject, simply because it is a different qualification. It shows a skill set that is completely different to the skill set one would require for normal A-levels or IB or pre-U courses, because it's not just an exam at the end. And therefore, I would always say you'll get the edge with the EPQ, and you'll definitely get the edge if the EPQ is done in the lower 6th.
Okay, great. And I think for now, that is all the questions that we have at the moment. So thank you very much. I just wanted to go back to the questions, and just from the session, we've had quite a few questions, obviously, surrounding the EPQ. We've had quite a few sessions surrounding medicine as well. So we will have, as I said, the EPQ webinar will be on the 8th of April at 10 a.m. And then we have 2 webinars the following week, one on the 14th of April, which will be how to get into medicine, the MPWA. And then we'll have a separate webinar on the UCAT and BMAT exams interview masterclass session, and that will be on the 16th of April. So if you haven't received those emails, which you should have done in order for you to be able to register for this one, you would have received the other emails. But if you haven't, please can you send an email to international@mpw.ac.uk, and I've put the email address on the chat box as well, and we will add you to those webinars. So if you do have any more questions, you can join those webinars and ask our experts there as well. Okay. And I think from my side, thank you very much to everybody that has joined. And Marcus, thank you very much as well for your time today. And we really sincerely hope everybody is staying safe. And if there is anything that you need, please do get in touch with us. We are here to support you. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining. and have a good day, have a good evening, and look after yourselves.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.